Hello guys and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I know it's kind of strange that I'm holding this microphone with my hands, but I just wanted to let you know that today's video is going to be very special. Today I'll be interviewing Gabriel Wyner, the author of the Fluent Forever book. I read this book a few months ago and I absolutely loved it. I had to ask him a few questions and luckily he agreed. He said yes, so here is our interview. Sit back and enjoy. Hey Gabriel, thank you so much for agreeing to have this interview with me. I'm super excited because I read your book and I actually recommended your book to a lot of my followers, my subscribers, students who are in my speaking club, and a lot of people read it and they really liked it. And so thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is always a pleasure, and it's nice to finally meet you. I've seen some of your stuff online before, and it's like, oh, cool. Yeah, let's chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually wanted to start this interview with asking you this one question that I feel like most of my followers and people I actually talk to, they were like, oh, you have to ask him this question. Because in your book, you kind of talk about learning foreign languages as I guess learning foreign languages the way kids do. And so basically, could you explain to me and to everyone who's listening or watching us right now, if adults should and actually can learn languages the same way kids do?
So adults and kids kind of share the same way that we structure memories, which is to say that when you talk about dog, dog has associations to, cat and tail and animal and pet and all this stuff. It's associated for English speakers with cultural things like lassie. Okay. And, a dog is a man's best friend and all this stuff.
Okay.
And if I tell you that, kutya is the Hungarian word for dog, I haven't told you any of that information in Hungarian. And so when kids are learning a language, they're never learning this kind of extra bit of translation or anything like that. Even when the kids are bilingual and there's two languages spoken at home, what they're given are a parent holds a cookie and offers it to the kid and is like, "Willst du eine Kekse?" And the kid sees a cookie, and they see this thing offered to them, and they're hearing their parents say, "Willst du eine Kekse? Kekse? Willst du eine?" And they have to make those associations. It's just thrown in front of them, and they will make those associations because that's just how our brains work. Our brains work as you see things that are happening at the same time, and they associate. Mm-hmm. And that never goes away. Adults learn in exactly the same way. If you as an adult, someone hands you a cookie and is like, "Willst du eine Kekse?" You're going to know just as well as that kid exactly what's going on. Mm-hmm. And so all of those processes are still in place, and they never go anywhere. Even when you look at how kids form grammar over time, because kids don't come out of the womb speaking, and they certainly don't come out of that at 2 years old and start speaking perfectly. They're making all sorts of grammatical mistakes, but they make grammatical mistakes in a very specific order. And that happens all the time. There's a pattern to it. It's just how the brain acquires language as opposed to how any particular kid acquires language. And adults make the same grammatical mistakes as they start becoming fluent in a language. And so there's all this evidence sort of showing that adults and kids, we all just have brains. We just learn things in a really standard way. And the only reason why this doesn't feel true, there's two pieces. One is that there's this kind of optical illusion where you look at kids who are 5 and they speak better French than you do when you've been studying French for 5 years and you're like, damn it, this isn't fair. And that's an illusion because that kid's put in 10,000 hours of French or 15,000 hours of French and you've put in a few hundred and you're like, okay, well, make fair comparisons. Step one. And then I think there's this other piece where adults tend to go about language learning in different ways than kids do, just because of the ways our lives are structured. We like to feel like we understand everything. And so going in front of a native speaker and having them yell about kekse and flasche and all these things that we don't understand feels bad. Mm-hmm. And so we're just like, no, what does that mean? Kutya, what does that mean? And they're like, oh, dog. And you're like, okay, cool. I know what that means now. And so we do these things that are not actually in our best interest. They're not effective learning techniques, but we do them because they make us feel less anxious.
Mhm.
Whereas kids don't have that anxiety and they're just like, I don't know, whatever, just give me the damn cookie. So
Exactly.
I think those are some of the pieces that come to mind.
Yeah, like the anxiety part that you mentioned, I think it's something that I really had to not struggle with, but like kind of understand when I moved here to Mexico. Because I
Mm.
don't know, like English is not my native language, but when I was learning English, maybe because I started as a kid and I was like a teenager, and there were like a lot of moments in my life where I was just like, you know what, like I don't really care if I make mistakes when I speak English, when I'm learning English, it's whatever. But right now, being an adult and learning Spanish, every time I can't say something, I'm like, oh my God, I feel so embarrassed. And it's crazy.
We are told that we need to be good at things in order to be valuable. Like
Mhm.
we're brought up in that way of like, no, you should be competent all the time. And language learning, I feel like, is one of the most intense, uh, I don't know, attacks on competency because you show up and you're trying to speak Spanish and you don't like, and why should you? You've only been working at it for, a certain amount of time, whereas all these other people have been working at it for 30 years, 40 years, learning how to speak Spanish because that's what they've been living and breathing their whole lives.
Mhm.
And, and so you feel not competent. And that, I think, because we have such close ties between like, I should be competent and I'm worth something as a person, it's easy to feel like, man, I'm terrible. Like I'm the worst because I don't know, the word for gas cap. And
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that's actually how I mean, I didn't feel like this when I was like learning English, but yeah, every single time like I did know a very specific word or like something super advanced, I was like, I have to memorize it right now. Like I will
hmm
need this word. This is so important for me. Yeah.
there was for a while in my like in the startup that I built, we started doing these master classes that were all about comfort.
Mhm.
There was a guy, Mate Sedjak, who Sedmak who was in Slovenia, and then I went to Japan and started teaching Japanese adults English, who started doing these workshops, and we like worked for us for a little while, and we took them on as well, where the whole point was get someone in front of a group to speak for like 60 seconds
Mhm.
or for 2 minutes or for 5 minutes and just speak in their target language and screw it up.
Mhm.
Just they're gonna screw it up. They're gonna get stuck. They're gonna be like, oh God, I don't know what the word is. And they're just gonna feel like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. And they're doing it in front of a group of 30, 40, 50 people. So it's public speaking, which is already really hard, in a new language, already really hard for a non-fluent speaker, for a non-really advanced speaker. So they're going to mess it up. And so they have this experience of failing in front of a group of people, failing. They don't say all the words exactly the way they wanted to say them. And you then talk to them and you're like, how did that feel? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, that felt terrible. I felt like I was a failure. I tried to do a thing and I was just, it was so awful and people were staring at me. And then you start asking, like, why do you think you should have been great? Why should you be so competent? How long have you been studying Spanish? And they're like, 1 month. And you're like, 1 month? And you just spoke for 60 seconds in Spanish? Like, isn't that amazing? If someone else, if a friend of yours did that, wouldn't you be amazed by them? Wouldn't you be like, wow, that's so impressive? And they're like, well, yeah, if a friend did it, yeah, I'd be impressed. I'm like, this is an opportunity for you to learn some kindness to yourself
Yep.
because everyone in this room, we're all trying to learn a language. We all feel like we should be competent. The struggle that you just went through is the struggle all of us are going through. And if we could just take some time to look at it and be like, wait, I don't need to feel stupid. I could actually feel smart instead of like, look what I have done over 1 month of learning Spanish that I can speak for 60 seconds. Isn't that good? Um, there's an opportunity to reframe some of these feelings of incompetence towards feelings of competence, of feeling like you're actually good at a thing for how little you've done it. And I think language learning is a real opportunity to play with that in a way that other parts of life are a little less regular. Like you're
Mhm.
not always going to screw up driving or screw up, writing an article in your native language or something like that. But you are absolutely going to say the wrong word in a new language.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So
it's absolutely true. I mean, the thing that you mentioned, that people basically are often like super critical towards themselves. And yeah, when it comes to language learning, especially. Also because, yeah, I guess we just want like results super fast. And I feel like it's also like your ego is suffering because like you can't really, you think you're gonna like, you study Spanish for a month and you're going to be super fluent. And once
sure.
you come to Mexico, like everyone is going to understand you. You're going to have wonderful conversations. Yeah, but also, so I wanted to kind of ask you this question because you said, oh, like kids, they have more exposure, like more hours.
Mm.
So is it only like more hours that we need as adults, or we can make them like more better quality hours of language learning? Like, how can we make those hours better quality? Not just like, oh yeah, I need 10,000 hours, or I don't know.
So you're on exactly the right topic, which is that we usually don't have 10,000 hours.
Exactly.
We just don't have the time. And so how do we make do with 500 or 1,000? I think one of the things that uh, I think one of the problems with this idea of like, oh, kids are great and adults are bad, is that it masks the truth, which is that adults are actually more capable than kids. Kids have lots of time, and lots of time wins over everything. If you throw 10,000 bad hours at something, you're still going to be pretty good at it. Whereas adults, if you only have 500 hours, those need to be really good hours. You need to be really careful with how you spend every single minute of that time. And if you are, as an adult, you can learn way, way, way faster than any kid ever could.
Hmm.
And so the components of that are, I would say, you need to be building memories the way that memories are actually built. This idea of this like dog is connected to cat and animal and pet and all this stuff. Um, you need to be very intentional about how you're building memories for every word and every sentence. And what I mean by that is that if I tell you, I often bring up this example from Hungarian where like the word for camera is fényképezőgép. And it's made of all these sounds that are not familiar to most people because almost no one learns Hungarian. And so the moment you say the word, anyone who's not familiar with Hungarian forgets the word. They're like, I don't know, that was a fenny what? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know, fenny, sunny. And so before you start to learn words, you need to focus on ear training. You need to actually become comfortable with all the sounds in the language so that you can have the structure, the scaffolding to remember words. And that does take a long time. It takes 2 weeks of being like, hey, we're going to do, versus short and long We're going to do like oh versus ah, this short and long ah, like a sound. We're gonna learn to hear all these sounds, and we're going to spend a couple weeks, and that's it. And suddenly now you have the scaffolding. Now you can remember words. And now words like fényképezőgép don't sound like garbage. They sound like thing I know, thing I know, thing I know.
Hmm.
Once that's in place, then instead of just memorizing translations, now we need to bring in pictures. We need to look up, what does fényképezőgép look like? And you start looking on Google Images and you see like these are the cameras that Hungarians buy, which are different than the ones that the Americans buy, or different than the ones that the Spanish speakers buy. And so you need to start understanding things as new concepts, because when someone offers you, here, willst du eine Kekse in German, it's actually not a chocolate chip cookie, usually. Like
Hmm.
different flavors, they look different. Like Kekse is not cookie.
Yep.
And we're all actually very good at picking up new concepts and attaching them to words. Anytime you go to a restaurant and you're like, I want, the barbacoa, and you've never seen that before, but you just see it on the menu. You're like, I don't know, let's try it. Then if you have a good time and you eat it and you like, I like that. Then the next time you go to that restaurant, you're like, I want more barbacoa. And you don't like in your head, you're not going like slow roasted braised beef. Like you just attach it to a food thing that I want in my mouth.
Exactly.
And so if what you're doing with your words are connecting them to food thing I want in my mouth, like just emotional and visual and tactile things, then you are learning as the kid is learning. And then though, as an adult, what you get to do are things like, I've had this really cool memory. I went to the restaurant and I saw this thing and I saw it on the menu and I wrote it down as a word I want. Or I went on Google Images and I saw a bunch of pictures of it and I thought that one looks really funny. I'm going to take that one. You have this cool experience. And then for the kid, they just have to wait for the next cool experience. But you as an adult, you can take that cool experience and say, hey, I want to remember this specific moment in my life and I want to remember it tomorrow. And so you can do things like get a cell phone app with flashcards or get physical flashcards and write down like that restaurant, super good tacos, barbacoa, or put that in your computerized flashcards. And now tomorrow you see this thing and it's like, oh, what was the name of that meat I had yesterday? Barbacoa. That thing was good. And then in a week, that thing comes back and you're like, what was it again? Barbacoa. And like this usage of tools is a way that you can actually be way, way, way faster than kids. Using things like tools like flashcards can increase your retention by easily 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're talking about the kid who spent 10,000 hours, now you only need 2,000 hours for the same amount of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You doing things like learning grammar rules. Like a 4-year-old doesn't know how to conjugate verbs. They never saw a conjugation chart. But you as an adult, once you've learned a few sentences and you're like, oh, this is how I ask for the taco. Whereas this is how I say you should have the taco. Let me look at this chart in this grammar book and get the explanation there. That's going to increase your retention by a decent amount, like not just like 10%, but probably like 20, 30%. And so now we're down to what, like 1,400 hours just by putting in some work into grammar rules, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And like there's a bunch of these moments where if you do a little bit of an efficiency tweak, you get access to frequency lists. You know, why learn a whole list of every fruit that's ever been made? Why learn every piece of clothing? This is a blouse. This is a, chemise, like everything. Like you go through these chapters in language books where they're talking about all these words that you're never going to use. Whereas, and as a kid, you hit whatever words you hit. I mean, it's just going to happen. But as an adult, you can actually say, hey, no, wait, let's stop. I don't want to learn niece and cousin and aunt. I want to learn mother, father, brother, sister. That's it. And I'm just going to stop for a second. And if I need to get to aunt, I'll be like mother's sister. And I'm going to just deal with the fact that I only know the really core words and not the big words. Learning words by frequency easily doubles your speed, if not more. Yeah. And now we're down to 600 hours. And so like, this is how you get down from the 10,000 hours is that you do these adult efficiency tweaks over and over and over again. And every one of them is going to shave off a ton of hours every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really agree with you here because I tried when I read your book and there you talked about how, for example, like just now you mentioned this Google Images, how you're looking for different images and you're playing this game of, oh, is it what I had in my head when I thought cookie in German? And this is exactly it's crazy because it was while I was reading your book, I came across this word in Spanish for a seashell. And also I didn't know that it also means this little bun, like la concha or like conchas. And I just typed it on Google and I saw those buns and I was like, wait, what? That's not what I was looking for. That's not what I had in my brain. And that helped me memorize this word so fast because now every time I go to the supermarket or the farmer's market and I see all of those buns, I'm like, oh my God, I will never forget how to say them in Spanish.
We're so good at learning new things and we're so bad at learning copies of old things.
Mm-hmm.
It's the idea of just, concha, it's the word for seashell. That's so boring and uninteresting.
It is. Yeah. How do you memorize it?
So brutal. But exactly what you're saying. You the idea of, wait, seashell could be something that I can eat?
Exactly.
What? Magic.
Yeah. But I also wanted to ask you because I got this question a few days ago. One person asked me, what if I need to memorize more complicated words like domestic? They use the word domestic. How do I memorize the word domestic?
When are you going to use the word domestic? like you're going to use it in really formal circumstances where you're talking about, let's get the, domestic help, or here's my domesticated animal, or things like that. And so first question is, do you even need this word? And if you don't learn it. I think it's really, really important that people filter out the stuff that they're never going to use. But that's not just like, there's a lot of abstract, difficult words that you absolutely do need. And so if this person wants to speak at a formal level in English, if they want to work, business English, something like that, then like they need that word domestic and they need a way to learn it. And so then the question is, well, like, when would you really use this thing? This is a tool for, this is a waste disposal unit for domesticated animals. This is the sort of sentence that you'll find. It's like, this is how we get rid of dog poop. Like outside, if I'm city planning and we have these dog waste, things where you're like, this is where the bags are and this is where the trash goes and all that stuff. Like if I'm a city planner, I'm not talking about the dog poop station. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about, the waste removal unit for domesticated animals, like this kind of thing. And so you need a story that holds that. You need a situation that you would actually use it in. Ideally, one that you would imagine yourself saying or yourself reading. So if you have no interest in city planning, then like, why are you learning the word domestic? Where is that going to show up? Is it about like the domestic service, trades? Are you someone who like deals with employment, stuff like that? Like then you need the word domestic. And so you find one that's personal to your needs. And as soon as you do that, you double your retention. You double how well you'll remember that because it's personal. And then you have that sentence. We hired into the domestic service trades this weekend. You turn it into a fill in the blank sentence. We hired into the blank service trades this weekend. And then you add a picture. And that picture is about the story. It's not about the specific word. It can be. If you can find a way to tie the picture to the specific word, you win. Like that's the best. And so domestic has the sense of home. And so if you have a little house, like that's great. But if you're talking about domestic service trades, like what you're really talking about are like house cleaning, things like that. You get this picture of a house, you get this picture of people cleaning houses, you get this picture of whatever, something about the domestic service trade. Just you at work, like typing buttons to find these people. Any of those pictures will work. The goal with the picture is not the picture. The goal with the picture is to make you think about the story rather than a bunch of strings of letters. Mm-hmm. As long as what you see reminds you, oh yeah, this is about, I was finding someone for this job, then that's enough. It's enough of a picture. It's totally fine. But you need that picture or else your fill in the blank sentence stops being about a story and it really turns into, these 5 letters and then there's a blank and then these 5 letters. It turns into like a weird Scrabble game instead of you learning the language. But that's the actual tactic. Like it's easy to think, kutya, picture of kutyak, picture of dogs. Like that one's easy to think about. But it's actually, you remember more if what you have is picture with a fill in the blank sentence and then the word on the other side. Mm-hmm. That actually works better than just kutya, dog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like how you said, like you should also kind of think if you're actually going to be if you can imagine yourself consuming content and like content is about this, or you can imagine yourself talking about this. Because I think a lot of people are just like, they worry too much about like, oh, I want to put more words into my active vocabulary. That's a lot of, like one of those things that I hear a lot of people say, like, oh, I read a book and I know so many words, but I want to actually speak. But like, do you actually want to like speak like as if you're a book, sound like you're
Sure.
like a very fancy, complicated book? Just like it really reminds me of how a few years ago when I was just becoming vegan, I was consuming a lot of literature like about like nutrition and being vegan, blah, blah, blah. And because again, I liked it. There were a lot of words that I had to learn in English because I couldn't really understand them. But I couldn't see, like, your question was like, can you imagine yourself consuming content in this? And yes, I could imagine myself, watching videos about like veganism or nutrition or whatever. And because of that, I was more interested in learning all of these words. Yeah, because if one day, like, I sit down and I start like watching a video about physics, there are going to be a lot of complicated words that, like, why would I even need them? It's not something I'm interested in. And yeah.
I think you being interested in a topic, because it's such a big shift in how quickly you learn it and how long you remember, like it really is the difference between you learning about veganism and you learning about physics, like same level of complexity in the words.
Yeah.
The words are just as easy as each other, but the veganism words, you're going to learn twice as fast and you're going to hold on to them twice as long, only because you're interested. And so the more words you learn in a language, the easier it is to learn more words later on. That's going to be this kind of constant thing. So the question is, how many words can you jam in the front? How quickly can you get a lot of words? Because as soon as you have a lot of words, then all the rest of them become a lot easier. And so why spend a second learning words that are not super interesting to you? Why learn physics words for any time at all when you could be focusing on things that are actually important to you? And so I think that's so important for language learners to really focus on, if you want comprehensive, I know everything in this language, okay, like I'm not going to tell you that's the wrong goal, but if you want that, the way you do that is by only focusing on things that you really care about, that are central to your life in the beginning, so that later on, all those extra topics like physics can come easier.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Yeah, and there are also one question that I wanted to ask you about, like learning multiple languages. Also something that some people ask me, like, how do you maintain your multiple languages? Do you have to like be especially careful about it, or like especially strategic about it? Because sometimes when I spend a day only speaking Spanish, I come back home and I mean, I still I can still speak English. Like I know English is not going to vanish because I still practice it regularly. But I guess some people start worrying like after maybe 4 languages, like 5 languages, that's when you're like,
They're not wrong. I mean, the more languages you get, the more time you have not speaking the ones you're not speaking. And you will gradually forget things all the time, every moment. Like right now, you are forgetting things in Spanish because we're speaking in English right now. Like that's happening. I'm forgetting things in a pile of languages, like every moment. That's true. That's life as a human being. Your brain is designed to just kind of lose things out the back. It's a leaky bucket. The thing I found that has helped me feel a little bit less anxious about that is, I remember back it was 2013, I was preparing influencer stuff because I wanted to put up my videos and be like, look, I wrote a book, like someone should pay attention to me. And if you're going to be a polyglot online, you need to have a video showing that you're a polyglot. You need to be like, look, I speak this and I speak this, and then you're doing your thing. And I started aiming to record that video, and I realized I'd forgotten all my French. And I was so scared. Oh no, it's gone. And I had I'd almost gotten to C2 level French. I did the test and I got right under C2. I needed 3 more points on the DAF. So it was C1 French, more or less. And then on that day, I was nothing. I didn't know any French, and I was so scared. And it was my whole internet personality was going to need to either go away. I needed to give up on the book. I didn't know what I needed to do. And so I started watching TV in French, and I picked a TV series. In this case, it was 24 with Kiefer Sutherland dubbed into French. Just a bunch of people talking about atomic bombs all day. And I watched 2 seasons. So I think each one was an hour long. It's 24 hours. So I watched 48 hours of French over 2 weeks. It's a very bingeable show. It's fun to watch. And so I just watched a few hours a day. And after 2 weeks, I was dreaming in French again. And I had no problem having the video. And so to go from nothing to, wait, I'm dreaming in French again, I didn't learn all of French in 2 weeks. I just had enough content thrown in my face that it brought back what I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, you're forgetting all the time. Yes, it's hard to maintain these things. Yes, it takes time to maintain these things. And if what I needed was to have all of my languages, that if anyone just came up to me and was like, hey, let's speak French, that I would have it, then that's hard. There was a time it looked like I was going to go on Shark Tank for my company. And I figured I actually did need to hit that level in all my languages. And so I started having tutoring 6 times a week, switching languages every single time. And like, that was really scary, but it worked. And it was hard. Like I would go from, a Spanish tutoring session to an Italian tutoring session. And I would be basically speaking in Spanish for the Italian guy. And he'd be like, that's not Italian, fix it. But after a few weeks of that, it started getting better. And so you can train up your ability to switch. You can train up your ability to hold on to these languages. But you can't do it without putting in time. And so that's the trick, is that you really need to put in a lot of time.
Yeah, and be patient, because I feel like it's something that's so, like, basically that's the problem that a lot of language learners have. Yeah, and me too. Like sometimes I just feel so impatient. Like I want results fast. I want to see progress fast. I want to make sure that I never forget any of the languages I'm learning, like any of the words. And it's just not, true. As you said, you're going to be forgetting, you're going to be trying to kind of not relearning, but as you said, remembering all this information. If you studied it like in the past, you will remember it once you start consuming a lot of content in this language.
There are some polyglots out there who are so impressive because they have languages, like 4 or 5 languages at such a high level at all moments. But when you look at how they spend their days, they're spending hours every day studying, because it's their passion and they're having fun doing it. Mm-hmm. And if anyone watching this is one of those learners who's just like, language learning is my favorite thing in the world and I want to spend hours a day doing it, then those are the people who can maintain 5, 6, 7 languages at top, C2 levels. But I think there's going to be a lot of people who don't necessarily want that. They want to put in a little bit of time every day and they want to have more and more abilities. And that's a reasonable goal too. And also those people will need to be honest with themselves that, like, if someone just jumps on the subway and is like, hey, I need to think this, like, let's talk about, philosophy in French, they might not feel really competent in that moment. And they may stumble a little bit. And that stumbling, as we've talked about already, like that's what it is to be a person. It's okay to not know everything all the time. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And I like how you said it's important to be like, just understanding what you actually want. Because I feel like some people are like, oh, I like this language, I want to become like super fluent here and here and here. But then like, is it actually your passion, or you're just like, you watch like one Korean drama and you're like, oh, I have to learn Korean now. I love Korean. It's my passion. Yeah. So to finish up this interview, I actually wanted to, it's kind of like a question, but more like, I'm just going to go for it. So imagine that you wake up tomorrow with the ability to speak and understand any 5 languages fluently. So which languages would you choose? It doesn't have to be the languages you can now speak, but like any 5 languages. And why?
So Japanese is at the top of my list because Japanese has been just kicking my butt for so many years. It is so brutal. So that one's at the top of my list. I've been obsessed with Japanese culture and all sorts of things for a long time. So that one wins. That's at the top. Mm-hmm. I'm going to keep my German. German has been so important to my upbringing and just like my whole time in Vienna, my whole time as an opera singer, that part of my life was stored in German. I don't want to lose that thing. So German. Italian at this point is my worst language because I never got to learn it at Middlebury. And and it was at the beginning of the Fluent Forever method, really before it really even started. And so I didn't get to have a lot of it, except that every memory I have in Italy is just so magical because that country is so magical. And so Italian is definitely there. Spanish, my wife and her family are from Mexico, and I need to have Spanish or else they will kill me. At least my wife will kill me if I didn't have that. So that's that one. And we get one more. That's tricky. Um, Man, I just kind of want to hold on to that until I need it. I think actually what I would do I think we picked Swedish. Um, my wife and I have been talking about, someday when she's done, like she's currently trying to study to be a doctor, and so she has no time. But um, we've wanted to have a secret language,
Oh yeah.
just the thing that the two of us know that no one around us knows. And we were looking at like what is the language that is the closest related to the languages that we speak already, but is basically unintelligible to everyone around us, and that almost no one learns. And I think we landed on Swedish as like the easiest one that was available that doesn't just sound like everything else.
Yeah, I've heard that Norwegian is also extremely like
Mm,
rare, and also, but I've heard that it's hard. I think it's harder to
yeah.
learn than Swedish. So yeah.
Yeah, I think Swedish was a little bit easier and also sounded a little bit weirder. I think Norwegian has enough relationships to German that you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of maybe like
Okay, okay.
figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I was reading this book by a Swedish author. It's a fiction book, and basically, then I decided to like watch a movie that is based on this book, and it was all in Swedish. The movie was in Swedish. Obviously, I was using English subtitles to understand everything, but yeah, the language was like you can, as you said, you can kind of you're like, oh, I think I know this word, but then you're like, no, I don't know this word. Like your brain is like playing tricks on you because you think you know these words, but you're like, nah, I definitely don't.
I find that with Portuguese. Like when I hear Portuguese, I'm like, oh, that's that. No, that no. It's as if it's Spanish and French that like they just had this weird baby that just doesn't make any sense. That
Exactly.
one feels really, really unintelligible in a beautiful way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be it. That's basically all I wanted to talk about. Again, thank you so much for taking the time and explaining everything in such detail. It was really fun. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Super, super fun
Yeah,
and
thank
great
you.
questions.
Yeah, thank you. If you want to, you can, talk a little bit about like your book, where like people can find your book, what it's called, and everything. Yeah.
Sure. Fluent Forever came out in 2014 and is available pretty much everywhere. I mean, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any local bookstore. I think at this point we have 10 or 11 translations also. And
Wow.
so it should be available in most languages except for like the two I wanted. Like it's not available in German and it's not available in Spanish. But almost like many other languages, it's available in. So that there's an audiobook in English. I think there might be some audiobooks in some of the other translations as well. So that would be where I would start with anything.
Yeah.
In addition, over the last 9 years, I built a startup that eventually like turned into a big VC funded startup thing, building apps around the book to try to make the content in the book easier and more accessible. You can just Google Fluent Forever and you'll find our website there. It's fluent-forever.com. Um, and yeah, actually, right now I'm writing a second edition of the book. Like literally this morning is like I spent all morning working on that.
Oh my God. I'm
Um,
definitely going to read it.
there'll be some fun new stuff about a lot about what we talked about in terms of this idea of comfort and being kind to yourself. Of
Hmm.
how can you learn to embrace the idea of not being good at everything all the time. Um, and like things like VR and Chat GPT and like just an update. It's been 10 years. It's time to write a second edition. So that will be coming out at the end of 2024.
Hmm.
For anyone listening, I would not delay like the idea of being like, oh, I want to learn a language, but I'm going to wait a year and a half to find out some new stuff from the second edition. Like, no, just the 2014 book is a really good book, frankly. And is still really topical. I don't. There's not a lot that I'm actually getting rid of from the old book. I think we landed on something really good right
Hmm.
from then. So yeah, that's my stuff.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I actually have your book right here. I was like, yay.
I
Yeah,
want
I
a
love it.
copy. I don't. I'm in North Carolina right now instead of my home in Chicago, and I don't have a copy. And I'm trying to write like updates, and I don't have the physical book in hand, and it's driving me crazy. So I
Mhm.
just want to reach for the computer and take yours.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much again for the conversation. And yeah, talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Guys, honestly, interviewing Gabriel was so much fun. I enjoyed asking him all of those different questions, and his response was amazing. We really do need to be easier on ourselves and be more patient. I feel like it's something that so many language learners usually struggle with. If you want to get Gabriel's book, you can click the link in my description. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you guys in my next video.